Good morning, students. Today we are going to start the World Zionist movement from the Middle East. The Jewish people who were scattered all over the world for many centuries had a great spirit of nationalism. Their living land was separate, but each Jewish family taught its own children Hebrew, their original language, and they worshipped their God Jehovah. Jewish priests called rabbis united the Jewish families through religious ceremonies and their special funeral rites. As the Jewish were persecuted by the Christians all over Europe, they were determined to protect their nationalism and their lost homeland at Palestine. So, there was one German professor, Dr. Weizmann. Now, what this Dr. Weizmann did? Dr. Weizmann started the World Zionist movement. In that World Zionist movement, he raised the demand for the restoration of Palestine. That was his demand, the restoration of Palestine to the Jewish people. So, in this situation, the movement gradually became well organized and also very strong, in which very rich class people also demanded. With the outbreak of the First World War, the British government faced severe economic crisis and approached the Jewish bankers for loan and subsidy. Under the pressure, Zionist Congress, in return for the loan, Lord Balfour made a public declaration in the parliament on His Majesty's government views, with favor establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavor to facilitate the object. So the declaration of 1917 was highly contradictory to Hussein McMahon letter. By this former declaration of 1917 was highly contradictory, and thus the homeland of the Jews in Palestine was promised. But this promise did not mention over the whole homeland of the Jewish in Palestine. So now the Jewish adamantly demanded the whole of Palestine. But previously, Arabia was promised to King Hussein. In their understanding, Palestine was a part of Arabia, and Arabia was just promised to King Hussein. Here, the conflict arise. In their understanding, thus Arabia was promised to King Hussein, and thus this contradictory diplomacy of the British was the root cause where the problem arose in Palestine between the Arabs and the Jews. So the problem became most formidable as the Arab treated the Jews as intruders who were the not residents of that place. But in place of that, Jews claimed for Palestine as their original homeland. The Jews were better in cultural, in westernized ideas, and more advanced than the Arabs. This was one of the cause of the conflict also. The Jews were better and equipped also. So after First World, Palestine became a British mandate area and administration was in British hands only. The Zionists then encouraged the Jews of different parts of Europe to immigrate to Palestine. Hitler's persecution on the Jews encouraged them to move to Palestine. As here Jews were getting full support from the British hand, and British and Germany were having a war of contradictory from so long, from First World War time only. So here in Germany, Hitler what did? The Jews who had scattered and became the resident of that place, they were thrown out, they were persecuted from German land, as they were getting huge support in Palestine by the Britishers. So this was the result of the Jews' history. So now after that, when the question of conflicting pledge was raised in the League, British cleverly pointed out that there was really no duplicity and conflict. If they promised Arabia to Hussein, certainly the letters of the homeland was assured to the Jews. It was their homeland in Palestine. with Hussein McMahon letters. If the homeland was assured to the Jews, it was their homeland, and thus the British government washed its hand off from this problematic situation now. The unrestrained entry of the Jews in Palestine and their purchase of land from the poor Arabs became a huge problem to the Arab leaders. They thus started to apprehend that the British administration encouraged Jewish colonization in Palestine. And here they are saying that Arab was full land was only for Arabs. Arabia was the full land of the Arab, pure Arabs. But here they are making colonization of the Jews also. So they are playing a double game. So thus occasional riots also broke out between the two communities, the Arabs and the Jews. After 1929, British government began to seek ways, the means to solve Palestine problem. Meanwhile, a number of people died in the riot. Britain then appointed the King Crane Commission in 1919 and Haycraft Commission in 1929, and Britain now restrained to take effective steps so far. Thus, in 1936, a royal commission appeal was appointed in Palestine, and this commission reported that Palestine should be partitioned into two small Jewish states. The holy places were to be kept under British mandate, and the rest was to be annexed to the Jews. The Arabs started fresh riots now on this. King Hussein then declared that till whole of Palestine was not assigned to the Arabs, bloodshed will continue. We are not in favor of this Palestine partition and Jews taking one part and one part British. That means we are not the masters of that place. And so now the formation of State of Israel was done. During Second World War, the Jewish leaders again helped the Allies with men and money. Naturally, the spirit and sympathy of Allies for the Jewish homeland became very strong. The clever Zionist leaders realized that America had emerged as a new center of world politics and world power also after Second World War. So they then shifted their headquarters of Zionist movements from London to New York. So clever they were in the movements. They then shifted, and thus 5 million Jewish Americans supported the claims of Jewish homeland. No American politician could ignore 5 million votes. The Republicans and the Democrats became sympathetic towards the Jews. In Zionists' Congress at New York, the Jewish demanded declaration of a Jewish state, formation of Jewish voluntary force, free and filtered entry of the Jewish in Palestine. Thus, an Arab American commission was appointed. Now, in this commission, what happened? It recommended that rejection both by the Arabs and the Jews. At this point, Jewish terrorism was intensified. On November 19, 1947, the UNO decided to partition Palestine on the lines laid down by the Royal Commission of Peel. In Anglo-Indian American Commission, which was appointed, what does it recommend? Its recommendations were rejected both by the Arabs and the Jews. That means its negotiation were not accepted at any point. The Jewish terrorism got intensified now. On November 19, the UNO decided to partition Palestine on the lines laid down by the Royal Commission of Peel. Now, UNO is also supporting the Royal Commission of Peel of the partitioning of the Jewish land, that homeland, that is Palestine. They were also in support. So Jewish leaders, Zionist leaders accepted the proposal, but Arabs rejected it. Arabs rejected UNO's proposal. UNO then sent a commission to fix the boundary of the Jewish state. UNO sending the commission. So August 1st, 1948, the Zionist leaders declared the birth of State of Israel on the lines laid down by the United Nations Commission, the UNO. So now they fixed the name of the new Palestine division part, which the Jewish got as their homeland, was named as Israel. with Dr. Chain Weizmann as the president and David Ben Gurion as the prime minister. The USA recognized the new state of Israel within one day only, and the Soviet Union followed the suit. Britain and other countries did not make any delay in granting the recognition. They all supported these decisions. Thus, the state of Israel was born. That means all were supporting the formation of the Jews' resident homeland in Palestine land, where the partition Palestine land with a new name of that land which is coming under Jewish mandate, that area will be named as the Israel name. Israel. So now the Arab Israel war started. As soon as the Israel was born, it was very sure the Arabs will not accept it. From the very long they were not accepting it. So how will they accept the new name and the new land? So it's obvious that war will be there. So the causes of Arab-Israel conflict have been discussed in detail in section 9.1. To sum up all the cases, the reasons of the Arab-Israel issues. Israeli people wanted to get their homeland in Palestine. This was the history. And Arab insistence to deny it and lay at the root cause of the conflict. What was the root cause of the conflict? Israel people wanted Palestine as their homeland, and Arab wanted to throw them away from there. The Arabs are by nature clannish, very pure clan. They used to fight for pure clan, their group, their community. So, and cannot tolerate any other religion outside from their culture of Islam. So they had congenial hatred on Jews who were of outside culture, not the Arab cultures. So they became emotional over the question of the Jews' immigration to Palestine. They believed that the sanctity of the purity of Islam race will be affected now. It will be damaged by the Jewish infiltration. This was the main cause of their thoughts. So British government played a double role here by assuring the Arabs the independent Arabia and the Jewish homeland in Palestine. Both the things they were balancing. Double game they were playing. So this dishonest, cunning and crooked diplomacy which led to a clash between Arabs and the Jews. Britain expected that the Arabs and the Jews would peacefully live together under British hegemony. This was their main target. Here they supported Arab with what intention? The intention of accepting them as the leaders, that means the British. And here they supported Jews because they wanted the Jews to accept them as the leaders in the Palestine homeland. So Britain expected that the Arabs and the Jews would peacefully live together under British hegemony, understanding British and accepting them as the leadership. But this did not materialize. What was the plan? It did not materialize. It was not successful. Britain expected to get hold of oil deposits for the main target in the Middle East. This was the main reason. From the very beginning we have read. So by creating a base in Palestine, they wanted to enter into Palestine land. When she found that the two people were at daggers drawn to each other, when British found that two peoples, the Arabs and the Jews, were at daggers, were killing each other, Britain proposed a partition which greatly angered the Arab nationalists. Occasional riots broke out in Palestine also, and thus force became arbiter of the dispute. So the Jews were clever in diplomacy with the Arabs, were violent and emotional. The Jews were very clever, very slow and steady, but they were very diplomatic and political in their nature. But Arabs were very clannish, very aggressive by nature. Thus they lost the sympathy of the Western powers. By forming the Arab League, now President Nasser of Egypt hoped for the Arab solidarity to crush the Jews, but the Jews mobilized American arms and supported the diplomacy, and thus Cold War was aggravated in the situation as USA in favor of Israel was. This is the history behind Arab-Israel war. USA was in favor of Israel, the powerful race, the powerful political world power. So the Soviet Union supported the Arabs here, as from the very beginning Russia was having the war with the Americans. So proxy war was the main feature of Cold War now here. Proxy war was going on. That means In favor of Israel, here America was fighting. In favor of the Arabs, here Russia was fighting the Soviets. This was known as the proxy war, and such wars soon broke out. The main events of Arab-Israel war spread out over a period of 1948 to 73, a long period of time. During the post-Second War period, no other question was so tough, chronic and violent than the Arab-Israel question. That what was going to be the result. This was a very adamant and dreadful question. And the answer was also very difficult to give. And what is going to happen now? So first Arab-Israel war, which happened in 1948. What happened in this? As soon as the state of Israel was declared in 1948, Egypt, Syria and Jordan attacked it. The Arabs under Nasser, the president of Egypt, would not hear any term except eradication of the Jews from Palestine. Most people expected that the Arabs would win easily. The Israelis gave up conciliation policies also. By their superior strategy and skill, they tried to crush the Arabs to the dust. The Israeli general Valerian routed the enemies on all sides by small, tidy, and very well equipped forces of Israel. Israel very soon captured west of Gaza Strip and west bank of River Jordan. So these were the very vital place with the northern part, and thus evicted 1 million Arabs from occupying this zone. Israel won partly because they fought desperately and partly because Arab states were divided among themselves only. The evicted Arabs came to be known as Palestinian refugees. Their cries for homeland were organized by Yasser Arafat, and this added new knots to already knotty problem of Palestine. The UNO declared ceasefire, but Nasser declared a state of war, ignoring that. So Israel, ignoring the UN mandate, they would not recognize the legality of Israel. They though defeated and regarded this war as only the first round of struggle to destroy Israel and liberate Palestine. Suez issue of 1956, Colonel Nasser, who was the new ruler of Egypt, was in favor of Arab unity and independence. He wanted liberation of Palestine from Jews. For this, he regarded guerrilla fighters to carry on a sabotage and murder inside Israel. At his insistence, the Egyptian ships blockaded the Gulf of Aqaba, and thus in 1936, Britain had signed an agreement with Egypt. According to this agreement, Egypt allowed the British to keep troops at the Suez. This was the treaty which was done due to the expire of 1956, and Britain wanted its renewal. Thus Nasser refused and insisted that all British troops should be withdrawn immediately as according to the treaty ended. So till this much we will study today. Next class we will continue with this topic. Today you will get certain questions you have to practice from this lesson. Okay. Thank you, students.